The alarm bell shatters the frozen darkness at 5 in the morning. In a cramped barracks somewhere in the Soviet Union during the 1970s, 40 men jolt awake on iron beds, their breath visible in the winter air. There is no gradual transition from sleep to consciousness. Within 60 seconds, every soldier must be standing beside his bunk, barefoot on concrete, waiting for inspection. This is not merely discipline. This is the machinery of the largest standing army on Earth, an army designed not for comfort or individual dignity, but for one purpose: to fight and win the Third World War that Soviet military planners believed could begin at any moment. To understand what happened inside Soviet barracks during the Cold War, you must first understand what the Soviet military was preparing for. After the devastation of the Second World War, when more than 27 million Soviet citizens died and entire cities were reduced to rubble, the leadership in Moscow developed an obsession with readiness. The enemy was now NATO, led by the United States, and Soviet doctrine assumed that any future conflict would be massive, sudden, and potentially nuclear. The Red Army needed soldiers who could endure anything, obey without question, and function as interchangeable parts in a vast war machine. Universal conscription meant that nearly every young man between 18 and 27 would serve, most for 2 years, some for 3. By the 1980s, the Soviet military numbered over 5 million active personnel. What molded these millions was not patriotic speeches or ideological fervor alone. It was the daily routine, repeated without variation, that ground individual will into collective obedience. The morning begins with physical training, even before breakfast. In summer heat or winter cold that drops below -30 degrees Celsius, soldiers run, do push-ups, climb ropes, crawl under barbed wire. The physical standards are unforgiving. A Yaoist recruit who cannot complete the exercises is humiliated publicly, forced to repeat them while others watch, or assigned extra duties that stretch his day into the night. The Soviet system does not accommodate weakness. It identifies it, isolates it, and applies pressure until the weak either harden or break. After training comes the march to the washroom, where cold water waits in communal basins. There is no privacy. Soldiers wash quickly, dress in wool uniforms that itch and never quite fit, and line up for inspection. Officers examine boots for polish, belt buckles for shine, the angle of caps. A spot of dirt can mean loss of leave privileges. A crooked collar can mean punishment duty. Breakfast is served in a dining hall that smells of boiled cabbage and black bread. The food is filling but monotonous. Porridge, sometimes a piece of sausage, tea without sugar. Soldiers have 10 minutes to eat. They do not speak unless ordered to speak. After breakfast, the real work of the day begins, and this is where the Soviet military reveals its peculiar character, because much of a soldier's time is not spent training for war, but performing labor. Soviet bases operate like self-contained factories. Soldiers build their own barracks, dig their own trenches, repair their own vehicles, grow vegetables in fields attached to the base, even manufacture furniture and equipment. This system exists partly because the Soviet economy cannot supply everything the military needs, and partly because Soviet doctrine values self-sufficiency in case supply lines are severed during war. But it also exists because constant labor exhausts soldiers, leaving them too tired to question or resist. The hierarchy within the barracks is brutal and unofficial. Soviet regulations forbid it, but everyone knows it exists. It is called Dedovshchina, the rule of the grandfathers. Soldiers who have served more than a year, the Didi or grandfathers, dominate the new recruits, the Salaboni or greenhorns. This is not mere hazing. It is systematic exploitation. Veterans force recruits to clean their boots, wash their clothes, give up their food, even surrender parcels sent from home. Refusal brings beatings, sometimes severe enough to hospitalize. Officers know this happens, but often ignore it. viewing it as a way to toughen recruits and maintain order without direct involvement. Some officers participate, using veterans as enforcers. The result is a barracks culture built on fear, where survival depends on enduring abuse until you gain enough seniority to inflict it on others. Recruits learn quickly not to complain. Complaints mark you as weak, and weakness invites more violence. Some soldiers desert, some commit suicide. Official records admit to thousands of non-combat deaths annually, though the true number is likely higher. Between labor assignments, soldiers train for combat. They disassemble and reassemble Kalashnikov rifles until they can do it blindfolded. They practice gas mask drills, donning masks in under 10 seconds because Soviet planners assume chemical weapons will be used in any major war. They study political education, sitting through lectures on Marxist-Leninist theory and the superiority of the Soviet system, though many soldiers simply endure these sessions in silence, waiting for them to end. Tank crews train on aging T-62s, learning to fire and maneuver across open fields that simulate the plains of Central Europe, where Soviet war plans anticipate the decisive battles will occur. Infantrymen practice mass assaults, charging across terrain in waves, because Soviet doctrine accepts high casualties as inevitable in breakthrough operations. Airborne troops drill parachute jumps, sometimes in dangerous weather, because delays are considered signs of weakness. Everything is conducted with urgency, as if the order to mobilize might arrive tomorrow. Punishment in the Soviet Army is swift and public. A soldier who falls asleep on an guard duty may be confined to the guardhouse, a windowless cell where he stands for hours or days, allowed to sit only briefly. A soldier who loses equipment may have his pay docked, though Soviet soldiers earn almost nothing to begin with. More serious infractions bring transfer to disciplinary battalions, where conditions are even harsher and soldiers perform dangerous work like mine clearing or construction in extreme climates. The purpose of punishment is not rehabilitation, it is deterrence and humiliation, ensuring others see what happens when rules are broken. Officers themselves are pressured to maintain discipline, knowing that incidents on their watch reflect poorly on their careers in a system where advancement depends on avoiding attention from higher command. Evenings offer little respite. Soldiers clean the barracks, scrubbing floors, polishing windows, organizing equipment. Dinner is served at 6, another rushed meal of soup and bread. Afterward, there may be an hour of free time, but even this is structured. Soldiers write letters home, mend uniforms, study field manuals. Some barracks have a single television, and soldiers gather to watch state-controlled news that emphasizes Soviet achievements and Western aggression. At 9, lights go out. Soldiers lie in their bunks, exhausted, knowing the alarm will sound again in 8 hours. Sleep is shallow, interrupted by bed checks and the sounds of men coughing or shifting on thin mattresses. This is the cycle, repeated every day for 2 years, with almost no variation except on Sundays, when training is lighter and soldiers may have a few extra hours to rest. But Sunday is also when Dedovshchina intensifies, because officers are often absent and veterans exploit the gap. Recruits are forced to perform degrading tasks, sing songs on command, stand at attention for hours, holding heavy objects above their heads. Some are beaten for amusement. The violence is not random. It follows a logic understood by everyone in the barracks. New recruits are at the bottom, and they remain there for months. After 6 months, they become outsiders, slightly higher in status. After a year, they become combat-ready, respected. After 18 months, they become grandfathers, and the power structure inverts. The system perpetuates itself because those who endured abuse eventually gain the power to inflict it, and few choose to break the cycle. Some do. Some older soldiers protect recruits, share food, intervene in beatings. But these acts of kindness are exceptions, made quietly and at personal risk. The Soviet military is preparing not just for war, but for a specific kind of war. NATO is expected to attack through the Fulda Gap in West Germany, and Soviet plans call for massive armored thrusts deep into Western Europe, reaching the English Channel within weeks. Speed is essential because Soviet strategists believe NATO will use nuclear weapons if the war drags on, and the only way to prevent this is to overrun Western positions before the decision can be made. This means Soviet soldiers must be ready to fight immediately, without hesitation, in contaminated environments, under constant bombardment, with supply lines stretched thin. They must be hardened to death, their own and others. The daily routine in the barracks is designed to produce this hardness. It removes individuality, erases comfort, and replaces both with a collective identity built on endurance and obedience. By the 1980s, the strain is visible. Soldiers return home from service traumatized, not by combat, but by the brutality of their own military. Families notice the changes. Young men who left hopeful and energetic come back withdrawn, suspicious, sometimes violent. The Dedovshchina system spreads into civilian life as veterans carry its lessons into factories, offices, prisons. Soviet society begins to recognize that something is wrong, but the military resists reform. Commanders argue that harsh discipline is necessary to maintain readiness. That softness will weaken the army at the moment it is needed most. Meanwhile, the Cold War continues, and the threat of sudden war remains real enough that change seems too risky. The soldiers themselves rarely speak about what they endure. In letters home, they write that everything is fine, that they are learning discipline and serving the motherland. They do not describe the cold, the hunger, the beatings, the exhaustion. Partly this is because military censors read letters, but partly it is because there are no words adequate to the experience, and no one outside the barracks would understand. The Soviet military has created a closed world with its own rules, its own language, its own logic, and those inside it learn to survive by accepting this logic without question. Survival means not thinking too much, not hoping too much, not expecting fairness or kindness. It means counting the days until discharge, marking them off on hidden calendars, and focusing on nothing beyond that distant moment of freedom. When soldiers finally complete their service and return to civilian life, they carry the barracks with them. They have learned that authority is absolute, that resistance is futile, that life is a hierarchy where the strong dominate the weak. These lessons shape the men they become. Some thrive, using the discipline and toughness they gained to succeed in a society that values endurance. Others struggle, unable to reconcile the person they were before service with the person they became inside. The Soviet system does not concern itself with these individual outcomes. It has achieved its purpose. It has taken millions of young men and transformed them into soldiers capable of enduring hardship, following orders, and fighting in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Whether this transformation serves them as human beings is not a question the system asks. The Cold War ends without the massive conflict Soviet planners spent decades preparing for. The Red Army, despite its size and readiness, never launches the invasion of Western Europe. The brutal daily routine that defined life in Soviet barracks, the Dedovshchina violence, the psychological control, the relentless physical training, all of it was preparation for a war that never came. Millions of men endured years of suffering to create an army that ultimately dissolved without firing a shot in the conflict it was designed to fight. The soldiers who survived that system are left with a question that has no satisfying answer. What was the cost of all that fear, all that exhaustion, all that wasted youth, spent preparing for a future that never arrived? And if a military system can function only by breaking the very men it claims to serve, what does that say about the state that built it and the war it hoped to win?